This is Regenerative Skills, the podcast helping you to learn the skills and solutions to create an abundant and connected future. I'm your host, Oliver Gaucher. Hey there, everybody, and welcome back. So I'm excited to announce that we've restarted the panel format. Many of you will remember that I used to put together monthly panels with experts on popular topics, and the truth is that they can be tough to coordinate, and they take a lot more planning than regular interview episodes, so I let them go for a while I focused on other projects. But thanks to help from some digital tools and popular requests from listeners, we're working to bring these episodes back on a monthly basis. So if you haven't heard the previous panel episodes, I'll give you a quick recap. Now, as part of my role building the Regen ag community in Europe with climate farmers, I'm always trying to facilitate access to good information from experienced practitioners in regenerative agriculture. Now, oftentimes I look to organize these panels around the common questions that come up in our community chats. In other cases, I see a lack of clear or concise information around a topic of interest. And other times I hear people referencing the work of other practitioners around the world for opportunities and inspiration, and I try and connect them with each other on these Q&A sessions after the episode. Another motivation for organizing these is to increase awareness of the practicalities that are behind the aspiration to great achievements in land management. Now, I hope that all of you out there listening to these episodes leave after having heard one of these episodes feeling that the incredible accomplishments and projects that the people that we're highlighting are achievable and replicable, and that you can do things like this too. Now, you may not personally identify with their particular context or even want to mimic them or their work exactly, but I would hope that you might find a point of connection in their stories and their journeys. Now, every project starts as an idea or a dream or a feeling that is nurtured into its potential by the people in the communities that have skin in the game and that dedicate their time and their efforts to co-create that potential. So I hope that's what you leave these with. Now, with that said, I want to introduce the panel and our speakers for this episode. So today we'll be exploring the challenges and the opportunities in mixed enterprise farming. And by that I mean farms that sell a range of products, especially in different food categories such as cereals and cattle, or market gardens and laying hens and agritourism and farm tours. Now, I was really lucky to get 3 farmers together from very different regions who are pioneering diverse enterprise farming on their land. Now, it's not usually the case that the farmers that I get to speak with are people that I've met in person or farms that I've physically visited. But in this case, I've been to and even ran some events and projects with each of the farmers who I'm speaking with. Now, Maria Jimenez comes to us from Wilmersdorf, just south of Berlin, Germany. Francisco Alves comes from Herdada de São Luís, Porcos Natura in Alentejo, Portugal. And Ariane Lotti joins us from Tenuta San Carlo near the Tuscan coast in Italy. They each give much better intros of themselves and their farms than I can, so I'll let them do that. But before we jump into the panel, you should know that there's a video version of this panel that includes the Q&A session in the last half hour, which I'm clipping off here for the podcast version. You can find that on the Climate Farmers YouTube channel, and if you happen to be an active farmer anywhere in Europe, you can also join the Climate Farmers community for free and participate in the farmer-to-farmer learning platform that we've built by going to climatefarmers.org. The community is part of a nonprofit dedicated to assisting farmers at all levels of their transition to regenerative management, and I really hope to see you there. So with all of that out of the way, let's jump right now into the panel from earlier this month.
So welcome everybody. This is the first of a panel series. We used to do these back a couple of years ago and had some fantastic conversations, and we're restarting this series again on a focus for mixed enterprise farming. The 3 panelists that we have today, who are going to present themselves shortly, have been members of our community for a period of time, and also just by chance, they are all the 3 hosts of our farmers gathering in each of their respective countries from the previous year. So Francisco is from Portugal, Maria is from Germany, and Ariane is from Italy. And before we get started, I'll give you a rundown of the focus that we'll be having today and the format that we'll be using. So because we're talking about the advantages and the challenges and some of the experiences from each of our panelists on how they've integrated diverse enterprises onto their land base and how that contributes to the larger vision of what they want to accomplish on their farm, as well as the challenges and the difficulties that make it complicated to run, especially in our current, let's say, bureaucratic and overview way of farming. Many of these things can sometimes be incompatible with regulations and what they call normativas in my area that govern what is possible and how you can integrate things on your farm. We'll be covering all of those from their different perspectives today. And by the end of our hour, we'll be having a live Q&A session for the participants here. So to get us started, Ariane, can you tell us a little bit about your own farm? Give us some context of what you're working with there and a list of some of the enterprises that you have integrated in that land base.
Hi, Oliver. Hi, everyone. My name is Ariane. I run Tenuta San Carlo in southern Tuscany, right along the coast, 2 hours north of Rome and 2 hours south of Florence. Tenuta San Carlo is on 480 hectares of land, and half of that land is in a regional park. And so there's about 230 hectares outside of the park and 250. It's not all one piece of land, which adds to some of the complexities, but it's right. It's right. It's all connected, even if it's not all in one spot. So the main, we'll say, revenue source and the main focus of the operation is annual crop production. I grow certified organic crops, and the primary crop is rice. We're in a perfect spot for rice production for the soils and the water availability and the climate. But I also grow heirloom wheat, other grains, legumes like chickpeas, flax, clover for seed, fava beans for seed. And then I grow forages such as hay, alfalfa, because I have a small herd of heritage breed cattle from this area. They're called Maremma cattle. They are highly adapted to this environment, and they spend most of the year in 2 areas of pine forests that are within the parkland that I have. And those pine forests used to be productive. There used to be pine nut production up until about 15 years ago, and that is no longer the case in the Mediterranean for pest problems. And so one of the main kind of areas of integration there is really with the livestock and building out that cattle herd. One of the other big revenue streams for the farm is agritourism. I run an agritourism here. We do everything from host people on their vacations for farm stays to host workshops, retreats. As Oliver said, we did host a climate farmers workshop here last year, events, tastings, and those are kind of the 3 kind of macro areas of farm revenue. And I'll just mention 2 other areas. One, because we're in the park, I have land that's basically highly protected marshlands and conservation areas. And even if that's not kind of economically productive in the traditional sense, it does add to kind of the complexities of managing the land here. And then while most of the crops that I sell as raw material, I start a farm brand. I sell packaged rice under our farm brand throughout Italy and into Europe as well. So that's kind of a brief overview of what we do here.
I feel like you held back there. I'm sure you have so many other side projects and little things in the works as well on top of all of that. So that already is really impressive. Let's go now to Francisco. Can you tell us about your operation? What is the core of what you produce, and what are some of the other enterprises that you've integrated in that?
Okay, so hello. My name is Francisco. I'm from Portugal, and I manage a family farm with 700 hectares of Montado system. Montado is an agro-silvopasturist system with cork trees and almond oak trees. So our focus is livestock, and we work with 4 different species: cows, pigs, sheep, and goats. And we work with the 4 different species because our system is very complex. So we need different tools to manage the system. And so this is our main focus in the farm. 5 years ago, we start to sell our meat directly to the consumer. And at the same time, we have a partnership with honey production. We have a brand for cured products too, the ham of the Lentiano pig, of the ham. And we have the farm open every day of the year. So we are always receive visitors, do workshops. We receive interns in the farm too. So this is the different kind of things that we are doing right now. And we have 10 hectares of olive, traditional olive. That's at the moment we don't do nothing because it's a problem of hand labor. So we have a large scale operation, but at this time, the main focus is produce the most clean protein with a positive impact in the ecosystem.
Amazing. Thank you, Francisco. And Maria, can you tell us about your mixed enterprise system south of Berlin in Germany?
Yes, of course. Hi. So I'm Maria. I run a farm 40 kilometers south of Berlin called Wilmersgärten. And it's not as big as the other two. We're a farm on 360 hectares of land, 240 of which are arable land and pasture, and 80 hectares of forest. We do nothing with the forest at the moment, so we only farm the land. And the land is really like all the fields are very close together, so they really form a beautiful landscape. And the goal for us was to establish sort of like an edible landscape of the future close to Berlin that combines different approaches of regenerative farming, such as agroforestry and mob grazing, holistic management, and market gardening. We also have bees and we produce our own honey with well, somebody here does. And yeah, the market garden is at the moment pretty much the heart piece of all the enterprises because it produces, the biggest outcome. And also most people of the farm work in the market garden currently. We have pretty much plastered all the land we have with trees. We planted more than 100 hectares of agroforestry of different agroforestry systems. Some on the little, like smaller plots up to 10 hectares are very diverse agroforestry system and silvoagropastoral. So we don't grow crops there. We only have fruit trees, nut trees, shrubs, planted berries and all this. And we let our cattle graze there and also the chicken follow the cattle so far. And then on the bigger plots, 25, 30 hectare plots, we were looking to find some pioneer trees that grow fast and are cheaper and don't require so much maintenance really. And also, we needed to find some trees that grow fast despite the drought. We have sandy soil here in Brandenburg and almost no rain. So it's like 450 millimeters of rain a year. This year was a bit better than the years prior. But so it's when we started the farm, it was really a desert almost. It's been totally overplowed land, totally degraded, sandy soil. So yeah, and since we have the trees there and we stopped plowing, it became really much better. So we practice direct seeding on the farm and we grow grain mostly, also legumes. And yeah, but at the moment this year, the fields are resting a little bit because we've been focusing more on the market garden this year and also on an extension of the market garden this year. So on the fields, we mostly have our cattle. And yeah, the cows, we have 64 cows now. They are mainly there for fertilizing the land. So they're like our walking compost machines and are really the to create more diversity. I have diversity for where our dogs as well. The grain stays at the farm and goes into our bakery. So the farm really works so well because we mainly live out direct selling all the produce. All the grain goes into the bakery. We bake with it. We sell the bread in the city alongside with our vegetables and herbs and flowers and everything else we grow. And the eggs from the chicken. Yeah, I think that's it so far.
Amazing. Well, look, so beyond all of the actual projects and activities that I know all of you do from those lists right there, I also know you're all involved with different types of studies or collaborations with learning centers, universities, or other organizations that are helping to run experiments and gather data from all of the things that you're doing. So with this incredible amount of complexity that each of you just listed off there, Starting with Maria, why would you choose to integrate all of these different enterprises, and what was the main motivation that is going to bring you towards the vision that you have for your farm?
Okay, so that's a good question, actually. So maybe the main idea really was to create a landscape that is vital, and to bring back diversity to the land, to this very like degraded and depleted, to revive the soil. And in the beginning, I thought a lot about permaculture, and I learned a lot about permaculture, so that gave me like the basis of everything we do. But with permaculture alone, I thought we can't really transform agriculture on a bigger scale, because if I talk about permaculture only and I have like big farms around me and I tell them like, hey, what we do is permaculture and everything is small here and we have like a lot of diversity, people, don't think they could like maybe, or mainly the reason I think where people are scared of that idea of permaculture is that they say we can't feed the world through permaculture and through diverse systems. So we have to like scale it up and find systems that you can scale up also, and adapt to the common arable practices that we use here in Germany. So I heard about agroforestry, and I thought agroforestry is a good way to change the land very quickly, and to bring back life to the land, and to tackle like most of the problems that we have with wind erosion and water erosion, and a very little biodiversity on the land. And then market gardening, brought a very quick and fast revenue. So first I had to pay so much money for all the trees, but the trees, wouldn't give me so much money back like in a short time. So I needed something else, which was market gardening for me. And so while the trees were already growing and I didn't really have to do much with the land, I could already start the market garden. And through the market garden, we started going to the markets. We started, to gather customers in the city, and and find people who are interested also in the project. And then the next thing was we started, doing some experiments with direct seeding. So I got like a small seeding machine, Semeata from Brazil. Everything like really low cost. So we have a very small tractor and only this direct seeding machine, and we got a lot of help also from other farmers in the area in the beginning, and started growing our own grain. And the problem really that I believe we have is that you can't really make a lot of money with when you sell your grain to the wholesale here in Germany. So for example, the rye that we grew last year, when I sell it to the wholesale, I get 180 euros for a ton of rye. And whilst when I take the rye and I bring it to the mill and I bake my own bread from it, I can make 5,000 euros for a ton. And I really wanted to show how we can practice regenerative agriculture and also live from it. So it came a little bit through also the market gardening aspect, that you go to the market and you only live from direct sales, whereas on the bigger fields you usually just sell big amounts of grain, legumes, and all this to the wholesale. So yeah, all these different enterprises really they kind of came naturally through the idea that we really want to show that we can live off this farm and make most of the money really ourselves, because we don't get much subsidies from anywhere else. So. And the cattle, they are really here to help us fertilize the land, because we don't do any other fertilizing. Of the quickest way to bring back life to the soil.
Yeah, that's one thing that from being at your farm, I was really impressed to see because,
Yeah,
like you
but we
said,
don't slaughter them, so they're not like an enterprise yet.
sorry, I think our audio might have doubled over there. What I was saying is, I really love the way that you brought an idealistic strategy of integrating all of these things together with the practicality of making it relevant for other farmers, in how there's a need to generate revenue when you're getting a longer term investment like an agroforestry enterprise established, and that you need to cycle nutrients if you know that you're not going to be importing them from outside, and the animals serve much of that purpose as well as a few of the other practices. Now, Francisco, obviously livestock is your strong suit. Can you talk about how you have integrated all of these different species as a way of managing the ecology that you have in the montado system in Alentejo?
So let me start at the beginning. And I think the trigger was 20 years ago when my father developed a system to raise pigs always in Italy. And at this time, we saw the amazing difference between the different managements, the conventional management, and after my father designed the system. And the system is basically put more area in front of the house of the pig. He changed the area 3, 4, 5 different times until he gets the perfect area. And after that, we start to learning a lot. With a simple change, we learn a lot. We learn that we can put the costs down. We learn that we can generate the soil only with the animals. And at the same time, that our animals are much more healthy. And only to understand, we have in the past we have a very big prophylactic plan with a lot of vaccines and antibiotics. And after we change, at the moment we don't use anything. We don't do any intervention in our animals. We don't need to do nothing. So the pigs was the trigger to get this experience and put the same principles in different animals. So we start with the pigs, we change the management in the cows too, and little by little, we start to put sheep and goats. And we start with a little group of animals, 20 sheep and 20 goats, because I only have one person to work with me in the farm. And we have 200 cows, 60 sows, 100 goats, and 100 sheep. And what's this challenge of these different management starts step by step, try to understand how we can use the animals like a tool to put the costs down and don't spend money in flowers or supplementation. So it's like, I like to say that is change a complicated system in a complexity. So complexity, it's completely different of complicate. And if I have a lot of cows, only cows, my farm is much more difficult to manage because I have one animal and I need more supplementation. I have more challenge in the market. So we put with this change in the management, we start to put the number of cows a little more down, and to increase the number of the different species. And we learn that we can, with the same worker in the farm, with less work, because we have the things much more simple right now. We can put the costs down. So as the example, the goats eat the brambles, the cows graze the open areas, the pigs eat the acorn, the sheep, they are like the gardens of the farm, and so they walk in the different small fence that we have. So we can integrate all these different tools, and at the same time with much more efficient in the different landscape that we have in the farm, because our landscape is very different. In the farm I have closed areas, I have areas with water lines, so it's like try to understand how the energy flow in the different plots of the landscape, and use the perfect species in a perfect area. So this helps us a lot to understand how be more efficient and how we can put the costs down. But of course, this is not happen one day to another day. We need time. So we start with a little number of animals, and we increase the number of animals. At the same time that we are increase the number of animals, we start the sales of our meat directly to the consumer. So when we grow in the number of animals, we are growing in the number of cells too. So this is very good because I don't have a big number of animals that I have the problem to sell it, So it's step by step, and at the same time, I don't have the 4 different species because I like to tell that I have multi-species. It's because these different species work very useful in my landscape. Okay, so I choose these 4 different species because they work. We can put the species work together. We can put the cows first. We can put the goats first. Depend of the season. Depend of the goal. But in the end, it's less work, less risk, and change a complicated system in a complexity, and bring abundance, catch all the abundance of a complexity system to benefit for all. And at the same time, because we don't have the big number of one species, it's amazing when you learn that the welfare of the animals increased a lot. Okay, so we don't have big numbers of the same species, and so change completely our experience, our mindset, and of course all the answers are in the soil. So for me, when it changed the animals, I change because I look at the soil. I don't need to worry about the animals because my focus are always in the soil. And so with the different species, I don't have overgrazing because when I change the cows, I can put the goats after because the goats go to clean the brambles and don't do overgrazing in the grass. So yeah, it's like playing chess, but I think it's more fun.
I really like the way you describe that, Francisco, and from firsthand experience running around in your fields out there to herd cattle during calving season and to move the pigs from one paddock to another. It's phenomenal to see this dance that happens along the landscape. And walking around with you really gave me insight into the level of understanding not only of animal behavior, but also observations in the ecology that inform your process of where to move, when, and how to basically coordinate this dance. Now, Ariane, can you tell us about the context that you're working in and how you have staffed and integrated different enterprises to make the dance at your place function?
Yeah, I think dance is a good way to think about it. The diversity here really comes from an approach to listening to the land and working with the landscape, right? I think all of the farmers on this panel, we have diverse landscapes that we're managing, and what works in one part of the farm might not work in the other in terms of crops or animals or trees, right? And so I think the diversity that we manage and the complexity around that is really a result of kind of what the ecosystem is communicating to us here. From kind of a more practical perspective, it's some of the challenges, there are, I think, well-known benefits to integrating, both having a variety of different crops that you grow in the crop rotations across the landscape, but then integrating animals into that crop production is both is beneficial for the reasons obviously that Francisco was talking about, but that I think are also well known in terms of soil fertility and diversity. But from kind of a management standpoint can be challenging because the skills that you need are different skills. And when I mean the skills that you need, it's the team of people that you have working with you on your farm, right? And so as kind of a manager, whether it's land management involves obviously people management and building the right team who can, one day, plant a rice field, the next, harvest a grain field, and then the next work with livestock is not something that is easy to find, especially when you're trying to implement more regenerative techniques that involves kind of really listening to and learning from the land. And so I'd say there's a really delicate balance in terms of the people who work, the team that works with me here, because you want to be able to cover the skills that you need from these different kind of enterprises, but those skills are also very at times specific to that specific enterprise. And so it's both, on the one hand, kind of training and teaching and learning, but also making sure that, if you're right now, I was telling Oliver, we just finished fall planting. And so we'll be able to dedicate perhaps more time, not just to winter maintenance, but also to livestock management, right? Because there are some periods of the year where if we're all in on crop production, we might not be as attentive to the livestock needs as we are. And so if you're going if you're thinking about a diversified, operation or running one, you're constantly thinking about the priority in terms of human attention that day, right? And at times, plants and animals have needs that can't wait, right? And so being able to effectively manage all of that in a team and as a farmer is, I think, one of the real skill sets that you need to run a diversified operation.
Yeah, very well said. I'm really glad you made the point there of talking about the complexity with managing people. As you start to integrate diversity onto the farm, the necessary management that only human intuition and experience can do it definitely brings so much more time investment than if you're just sending machinery out and a technician to do a certain job. And I also like that you mentioned that this is the way that most farms were not too long ago, that this specialization and monoculture cultivation is relatively new. And that really bucks the perception that this is how we've done it forever or for a long time. And honestly, all of us are starting to move back towards an integrated and more diverse way of cultivation, not only for the resilience, but also for the ecological benefits that you mentioned, despite all of the challenges that come with that as well. Before we move back to Francisco, Ariane, can you talk about the learnings and the challenges that you've really taken on since the challenge of kind of reviving this farm has matured over the years since you've been doing it?
Yeah, I think I personally have grown a great deal because I think I don't want to say I'm a seasoned farmer now, but I am in my 10th season of production. And I've come to peace more with questions about the weather and things that I can't control necessarily. But the challenges are, many of them I think are tied to also the fact that globally it's a challenging time, right? And even if I have dreams for growing the farm and having more projects on the farm, the reality is that, it's been hard through COVID now kind of in supply chain challenges and changing kind of economic conditions to just also maintain and continue to be successful, the core businesses that are part of the farm, right? Because to be a successful, farmer or business person these days requires really learning a lot, being able to adapt very quickly and be able to integrate changing situations and circumstances constantly. And from a farming perspective, climate change is always the thing that's looming over us. And if I'm thinking about, how I'm going to deal with water, yes, I can think about it in a very kind of integrated, holistic way on my farm, but then there are some crops that just need more water, right, than other ones. And so remaining kind of up to speed, remaining kind of, able to run a business that has different requirements for different kind of sectors is a challenge in and of itself right now. In part too, because of, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but with regenerative approaches, it's hard also to find people who can be part of your team who are trained on even some of the basic concepts, right? And so a lot of the learning is done on farm, and it's done and there's a lot of learning exchange happening. And if I could locally find a herd manager who had even a tenth of the experience that Francisco does, I'd probably hire that person immediately to kind of build out the livestock component of the farming operation. But I haven't been able to do that. And so instead of growing that out more quickly, I have to learn things, and I have to train people who work with me, all the while still managing the rest of the operation. And so the challenges are really, staying up to speed and continually adapting to like continually changing conditions, but not just in one production area, but in multiple ones. And that's where, if you're a good manager, the complexity helps you, right? And then the challenges really have to do with the fact that things are really always changing. And so if you want to stay kind of on top of your game in that sense, you have to enter into the details and the specifics of essentially different subsectors of what you're doing. And I will just say, especially for those of us who are in Europe, the regulatory burden for each specific different category of production is enough to disincentivize integration and complexity. Even if I have 30 cows, I am regulated as if I were, a much larger livestock operation. Even though I grow a variety of different crops, each one has its own kind of, requirements. And then just the regulatory context that we're operating in means that you usually just have to choose one or two roads and not multiple.
Yeah, that's really important to have in mind. And I see in the background here a lot of heads nodding in agreement as you mention the bureaucratic burden of all of the complexity that you feel is necessary to achieve the objectives that you want for your ecology and for your business, but that your hands are tied very often, as there's so many others who are hoping to do right by their landscape and also build resilience into their business, but are not able to for all of the extra work that creates. Francisco, aside from having a new job offer from Ariane, or at least a need to get over to Tuscany to teach some workshops, tell us about some of the main things that you've learned and that have brought your complex dance that you are conducting into reality in the years since you've transitioned into new management.
The things that I learned. I start to learn that I like to walk hours in the field and do a lot of observation. And what I learn more is with observation and day by day, when you change the management and we respect the principles of the soil, you see the results. And this is what makes a huge difference in my system. It's learn about your land, learn about what's happened in the past in your land, and at the same time that you respect the principles and you put the tools in the correct place, magic happens, and it's true. You see it in the animals, you see it in the soil, and of course I made a different course. I spread our work with a lot of different groups and talking with all other farmers. It's amazing. Different contexts, different climates, but it's true that the principles are the same. And more we talk with the different contexts and different realities, we understand that the principles are the same. So I think it's and of course you have to put out of your comfort zone. We learn a lot when you put out of the comfort zone. And every decision that I make, I learn. If I get mistake, I am learning. So of course it's we can stop. We have to do and try to do different and learn more. And this is what the things that I always try to do. And as you know, I have only one person. I receive interns that don't know what is the difference between a cow and a sheep. But they can help in the same day. They can help Because it's if the persons have the sensibility to only to understand what is the goal, the people don't have to understand about the technical things or what is the morphology of the cow. No, we have to explain what is the goal of the farm. Only this, and walk in the field, explain the soil functions. Simple, put it more simple. And I think the problem it's people who manage the farms and where people have to do decisions. Sometimes we have to fight to see the more simple way of to do the things. Okay, we don't have. So I tell you, I have 4 different species. I sell the meat, and I have Orgo, our company, and so I stay less time in the farm right now. And 20 years ago, I spent a lot of time in the farm with different groups of cows, with the cows spread in different fens. Now it's all very organized. And so I think, but in the end, what I can tell you, it's focus in the soil. The soil gives you the answers enough, and don't never forget the principles of the soil. If we have the focus in the principles of the soil, all the decisions are much more easy to make.
Nice. I really like that example of getting clear about what it is you're really trying to achieve as a way of guiding your decisions. And then, like you said, just a lot of time out there in the details and the nuances of the observations that can help determine whether the decisions that you've made are getting you closer or further away from the vision that you've articulated. Now, Maria, same question to you. What are the learnings and the challenges in just the short time that you've gotten into farming? Because I know this is kind of your background. You have been on a very sharp learning curve. What are some of the main things that have been expected or unexpected in these last few years? Hang on, you're still on mute.
So the past 8 years have been all about learning. And I mean, so we really started from scratch. We had the land, and it was like more or less a coincidence that somebody offered it to us to farm on it. And the goal, as I said, like, was really to create this holistic landscape and to combine like all different methods of regenerative farming so that we can have resilient systems. And I'm an artist, and I drew like a sketch of how I imagined the farm to be and of all the different systems I want to show and I want to try out. And it was really a jump into cold water, starting with planting the trees and, having like all kinds of, doing all kinds of mistakes because there was nobody to show us. And in the, 8 years ago, I didn't have a lot of farmer friends. I didn't know about climate farmers. There was really nobody around really to show us how it works. So other than YouTube videos and some books, so we just started. And and the biggest learning really for me was that, as Ariana and Francisco also said, farming for me is really a dialogue with nature. So I do something and nature answers, and it goes ping pong almost every day. And it's become it's a beautiful journey of connecting with the land. What was, in the beginning, it was mainly, just an idea, and now we're doing it, and we're like in the work and every day. And there's sometimes, you're just overwhelmed by everything that, you have to do, and by all the problems that come up, and especially with all these different enterprises. And also, we don't have many people on the farm still. So we do like most of the things alone. Everybody's just really working in the market garden. So everything that's going on with the cattle and on the field and, with the trees is something that we just do with the family. And yeah, but it's, it's also, I think what I've learned as well is that this kind of farming is like just the term agroforestry. It's such a modern term, and you sound like an expert, when you start to talk about agroforestry and all this. But it's something It's natural. So it's nothing new. Trees belong into a landscape, and trees belong, close to our crops. So it used to be that way. And we just realized that because we cut down all the trees and all the shrubs and all the hedges in the landscape, we really depleted the landscape, and we limited ourselves, in our way of farming. And now we realize that, and we have to bring them back, and we try to find ways to, implement them and combine it with the practices we got used to in the last decades. And I believe is we have to be brave and just believe that, farming after the rules of capitalism doesn't get us anywhere, really. We have to farm after the rules of nature again. And this is how we can feed the people, and not only the people, but, also all the other living creatures that we share this place with. And this is how we can farm in the future, and for, and keep the land healthy for the generations that come after us. And even though I can't, the grain I grow is much less than my neighbors, I will still have grain, even when a storm comes and big rains, come, because, just our systems are just more resilient. We had this in the past, and whereas all the grain of the neighbors was just flat on the ground and wet, and they couldn't harvest any. In our agroforestry systems, with the clover underneath the grain, for example, we still been able to harvest a good amount, and that was a good example also for some of our neighbors to see, like, hey, maybe they have a bit less, but they can still harvest, and it's a good quality still. So
there's so much to take from all of these answers, between calibrating your senses to become better at observing the landscape in order to deepen your dialogue with the natural world, to inform the way that you farm, to embrace the complexity of managing the people required to take on the complexity of multiple enterprises, to stagger and invest in the enterprises at the appropriate moment so that you can keep a cash flow while you invest in longer term enterprises that might not give revenues for a while. And those are just some of the many that have been mentioned here tonight. I'm wondering if you can put us into a scenario here where a new farmer is asking you for advice on how to integrate new enterprises into their existing, the base of their farm. If you could keep, let's say, a paragraph or two of advice to this farmer, Maria, what would you tell them? How would you give them advice on how to integrate more complexity in?
Well, I think it's hard to say. It really depends on, where they are, and so farming really is, it's not only the land that you farm and, the characteristics of the land, but it's also where are you in Europe? Are you close to a city? It really also depends on how you can sell your produce and all this. So yeah, there's sometimes people come, that come to our farm and ask questions like this, and they're about to start their own farm and their own business. And the only thing that I always say is that we have to look at, everything holistically, and then make the right decisions, and don't do too much too fast. Grow slowly. And yeah, because farming can be overwhelming, and especially, the more people you require, for example, to manage in your team, that's something you have to learn. And you can't, you can jump into cold water and learn fast, and then, make many mistakes. But also, I would rather always say start small and build up slowly. And yeah, that's probably what I would say.
That's good advice. I appreciate that. Francisco, what advice would you give if you could summarize it to a paragraph or two? I know that's tricky.
Now, I will tell to make the holistic contest with you first.
For me?
Yeah, help a lot. So no, because as you know, we have Orgo. It's a company that we try to help farmers to do the transition to regenerative agriculture. And think that I observe a lot when we do the first visit to a farmer is the farmers have to do more questions for himself. An example is I'm starting farming now. The farm is in my family. My grandfather had 200 cows. My father 200 cows, and me 200 cows. And why do you have 200 cows? And the people don't know. Okay, so it's in the beginning, before you think in the multi business, is question yourself why you have the main business in your farm, and because this decision influence all the decisions after. So it's make questions, look, put in a balance what you want, and try to understand if what you want it's what the landscape can give you. Because you can like a lot of pigs, but the landscape it's not for the pigs. So and you can do it, but you have to assume that you have a lot of work to do it. So it's questions, and look, before starts a new enterprise, look at you have now and see make sense, don't make sense. I have the number. If I have a market garden, it's very big, it's small. I think it's a lot of different questions. Try to wrote the holistic context. I think it's very useful to understand the direction, to understand the goals, and to view all the big picture of your business in your life. And after that, make decisions step by step. Of course, step by very slow. And it's like that. Make questions before any decision.
Nice. Yeah, that's definitely a key part of cultivating a learning mindset and always staying open to new input. Ariane, what advice would you give to a farmer in a condensed way? Because God knows there's enough stuff to talk about.
Yeah, first I always try to support the enthusiasm and all of the really big ideas, because I think that's like really wonderful to have that positive energy around farming. But then there are a few key pieces of advice just to underscore something that Francisco said. What is already happening on the landscape, right? I grow rice not because I want to grow rice, but because rice is what grows well for this landscape, right? And so if I wanted instead to, make wine, the soils here are not right for making wine, right? I would go look for land 30 kilometers away. And so, the first step is really to enter into that conversation with your land and see what can grow without forcing it, right? Not that you can't try new things or innovate, but you also don't want to fight against kind of natural cycles. 2, is there a market for it? I think if you're running a farm business, you need someone to buy your product at a price that works for you and your business. And so when you're launching new products or thinking of integrating new aspects to your farm business, who's going to buy what you produce, right? And I usually do my calculations for like a new product or a new sector. I'm very conservative in the numbers that I do, because inevitably something will happen, right? The yield will be lower, the quality will be lower, a client won't come through. And so I always run my numbers really conservatively. And then the last piece of advice I'd have is really to do what we're doing here tonight, right? Which is connect with other farmers. When I first started farming here, I was told by almost everyone that I was not going to be able to do it. I was not going to be able to do it. I was not going to be able to transition the land to organic production. I wouldn't be able to stay. The first few years were really, really hard just because I hadn't found kind of a supportive community. And so making those connections, not just with like the physical kind of landscape, but with the human landscape, is as important as anything.
I'm so glad you ended on that note. So before we go into the Q&A section of this panel, I want to emphasize that that's exactly what we're here for. The Climate Farmers community it exists to facilitate the conversations and the learning between farmers that can be often very difficult to access. We found so many farmers in our network that feel isolated or that they don't know who they can connect with in their local area for support, for experience, for wisdom and knowledge, all of these things that can help to shortcut the learning curves that we just talked about. And you can join now for free. I'm going to post the link in the chat right now. So if anyone here is a farmer within Europe, you can join for free. There is a filter on there in case you don't meet that requirement. Before we go into the Q&A section too, I'm going to
Now, before we wrap this up, just remember that these episodes are only the beginning of the learning resources, design and coaching services, in-person courses, and interactive community that are available through Regenerative Skills. The Discord server is our free community where you can connect with other like-minded listeners, exchange ideas, stories, tips, and resources, as well as interact with me directly and quite a few former guests from this show. Our Instagram account @regen_skills is the best place to see the projects that me and the team are working on, both for clients and collaborators, as well as on our own properties. I'll also be announcing the certification courses, workshops, and gatherings that we've got coming up later this year. If you're interested in getting dedicated support for your own project, you can now schedule a free planning session with one of our team members through the request form on our website. You can also find all the links, show notes, and past resources there at regenerativeskills.com. We truly believe that no matter your experience, your knowledge, abilities, resources, or background, you can be a powerful force for regeneration on this planet, and we're here to help you find your path. So as always, remember to keep taking those little steps every day towards a regenerative future, and I'll be right by your side along the way.